I'm now happy to introduce Suzanne Flint.
Thanks, Eileen. And thanks, Stanley, for those catchy tunes at the beginning. Really made me feel like my life kind of flashed in front of me, but it was fun. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on volunteer engagement. It's the fourth in our series of online fellowship courses. Hopefully you've all been able to at least look over all the course topics to date and participate as your schedule and time allows. Clearly, the more you can participate, the more you'll get out of this opportunity, but we also know that your own circumstances, previous experience, and skill level may dictate fluctuating participation. However, do remember that attendance in all the online courses is a minimum requirement for completion of the fellowship. That's why logging on and reviewing the content will be important, even if you are unable to complete all the assignments. We are making plans to move all the course content to our Transforming Life After 50 website following the fellowship so that these resources will be available to you and your colleagues in the future. If you are at least familiar with the content, however, these resources will be easier to access. I want to thank Stephen Ristow for his excellent course on partnerships and collaborations. The course stimulated lots of interesting conversations about libraries' readiness to partner and the array of potential partners that libraries might consider. Stephen is also with us on today's webinar. He and I will be assisting Carla and her panelists by monitoring the chat and Q&A sections. And so we're actually going to ask you to be kind of specific about where you put your comments to help us and to differentiate your posts with comments that you want to share posted in chat and questions for which you want a response posted in Q&A. Although you can't see everyone else's questions, we can, and we'll make sure that all the questions get to Carla and her panelists for a response. Carla Lane has 25 years of experience working with nonprofit organizations as a manager, volunteer administrator, and technical assistance provider, developing and managing projects on a local, regional, statewide, and national level. Carla started her career as a VISTA volunteer and then worked for the United Way in Sacramento for over a decade. She also operated her own consulting practice, helping nonprofit and government organizations, including public libraries and their boards, with volunteer administration, board development, and community collaborations. Carla joined the California State Library in 2001 to work on the statewide library literacy program, which engages over 11,000 volunteers per year. In addition, she also designed and currently oversees Get Involved, Powered by Your Library, a statewide initiative to increase the capacity of California public libraries to engage volunteers. The project includes a statewide partnership with VolunteerMatch.org, which has become a national model. Carla is also the author of several published articles on volunteerism, as well as the book on the subject entitled Volunteer Involvement in California Libraries, Best Practices. She has herself volunteered for over 18 years as a Girl Scout leader, treasurer, and trainer. Carla?
Hey, thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everybody. I guess it's snowing every place but here, but they're even talking about it snowing in Sacramento this week, so that would be pretty amazing. It would be very fun to see that. So glad that you're all here with me today and with my panelists, and that's what I want to tell you about. I'm so happy that I've invited a couple of folks who have been early adopters in our statewide volunteerism project. They've each had some terrific experiences and results, and I'm going to let you hear from them a little bit later, and they're going to join me in helping answer questions with you. Jennifer Baker is the director of the St. Helena Public Library, which is in the Napa Valley, and Joan Young is the volunteer coordinator for the San Jose Public Library in the Silicon Valley, and they've just been great collaborators, and thanks in advance to both of you for being with us here today. I think it'll be great to have your insights as well. Okay, I'd like to bridge a little bit from last week's reading where we looked at the 7 elements that must be part of any successful volunteer program. And if I haven't beaten the meaningful written position descriptions over your head hard enough, let me just mention it again, that that's the most important thing we do. And I've had some really good response to the assignment. I've seen some really great ideas and provided some feedback to folks, and we're getting some good results there. So thanks for playing. We also talked about the importance of targeted recruitment, meaning that you're going to go out and find the people you need like a heat-seeking missile instead of just waiting for them to walk into the circulation desk and ask if you need an event planner. We talked about screening, interviewing, orientation, and training, that there's a difference there and both need to be done. We talked about the important role of collaboration and support with staff. And then we spent a little time on recognition and acknowledgement. How do we make sure volunteers understand how much we appreciate what they're contributing for us? But what we haven't talked about yet is the seventh thing, and that's sustainability. How are we going to keep these volunteer programs going? And that's what one of the things I'm going to do today is finish up the conversation here by talking about sustainability. Oops, I'm not pushing the right button. There we go. So here's the objectives I have for our hour together today. First, we're going to identify some strategies that will help sustain volunteer engagement into the future. One thing we know about baby boomers is they may not stick around as long as our parents did as volunteers, and so we're going to look at how you can make that work for you and for them. Then I'm going to spend a little time talking about some trends and issues in volunteer engagement, things I often get asked about and things I think you should know about so that you can take advantage of them. And finally, I've tried to save a lot of time today so that we can actually respond to questions that you might have on this whole topic, on the volunteer engagement topic, not just on what we talk about today, and also so that you can hear a little bit from Jennifer and Joan, who have some great ideas to share. So let's get started and talk about the sustainability piece. In the old days when we talked about volunteer management as opposed to volunteer engagement, I was always asked the question, how do I retain volunteers? We talked about volunteer retention, and what that meant was, how do I keep these people hanging around here, coming in every week until they step into the grave? That's what people really wanted, was they wanted people that they could count on who would be here for life, or at least until they get their 20-year service pin. But here's what we know about baby boomers and the generations that follow, is that most of us probably won't stick around to get that 10 or 20-year pin. For the most part, we will come in and do the work and move on to the next challenge. So what we need to do as volunteer engagers is be strategic in how we design volunteer positions so that the work continues when the volunteer moves on. The way to think about it is that what we're trying to do now is not focus so much on retaining the volunteer, although certainly we want to make them happy so they'll stay, but we need to be aware that they're not all going to stick around. So our real goal is, how do we sustain the work they've begun? How do we ensure that our volunteer programs continue even if individual volunteers move on? And part of that will be in working with flexible options. And I'm going to give you some examples of the kinds of volunteer positions you might create that would work as sustainability strategies. The first one I learned actually from my mom, who was an active volunteer, and some years ago she served Meals on Wheels, which she loved. She loved that, taking something to somebody who needed help and getting to spend a few minutes talking and chatting with an older person or someone who was shut in for another reason. But at that time I was living in Hawaii, and she wanted to be able to, drop things and go from Michigan to Hawaii and visit me. So she wasn't interested in having a shift or one of those routes that would be every day, or once a week, every day, forever. So she jumped at the opportunity when she was offered the chance to be a substitute Meals on Wheels deliverer. And what that meant was that they might call her and say, so-and-so is going to be on vacation next week. Would you be willing to take Route 32? Or they might call her the night before because somebody is ill, or even that morning, and say, could you take the people in this route just for today because someone is sick? That worked out very well for her. And I think it might be something to consider as you're looking at volunteer positions you're creating, that you want them to go on and they have a regular need for a volunteer in them on an ongoing basis. If you can come up with some substitutes so that they can help you when you need help, but also you're sort of training people. I mean, eventually that person might want to take on a longer-term assignment, but it gives people an opportunity to drop in and help, but not feel like they're tied down if their current situation doesn't allow it. A second strategy to think about in terms of sustainability is to break assignments into smaller pieces. If you've got more people working on something than one, then eventually, if one of them leaves, you've got several people who can help pull up the slack. Think about it in terms of, I'm often asked, can I get a volunteer coordinator? And that's a loaded question, but I'll take it here. And my idea is, sure, you can do that. But if you put all the responsibility in that one person and they have to leave, then you're going to be left holding the bag for a big project, and you don't want to be able to do that. So could you find a way to create a volunteer coordinator who is 5 people who take on different assignments, or maybe 2 assistants to you who can help you do this, but always thinking in terms of how can we have more than one person engaged in this, so that over time, as people come in and come out, that we've got people standing by or who've been trained to sort of keep the ball rolling. Now, you saw a team assignment in the reading, in those little video clips I gave you. You might remember Judy Kleiken, who's the literacy coordinator at the San Jose Public Library. She's brought on some of her adult literacy tutor volunteers to help identify and work on some very specific projects. And that's exactly what she's done. She's given a group the responsibility, and she has them manage the work and then checks in with them periodically. Again, another way to keep people engaged but not have the ball dropped if somebody has to leave. Job sharing, I'm sure you're familiar with. That's something you can do with volunteers as well as with staff. Or think about creating consultant positions. For example, let's say that you might need a PR volunteer once in a while, or a graphic designer. Could you, instead of making it an ongoing position where they're with you 2 hours a week, or you ask them for several hours a month, could you say to them, can I call you in when I have a project? Maybe you've got 2 or 3 of those folks out there, so that you don't have to go to the same person all the time, depending again on their desire and their time availability. But think about how a volunteer could be used in that capacity. Virtual volunteerism is a really cool thing if you haven't heard about this. And this is a way that what we do is create positions that people can do from home or from wherever they are. So they don't even have to be in your state to do certain things. For example, what if you need something translated into another language, or what if you need some research done for a project you're working on? Having virtual volunteers available is kind of a cool thing, and gives people the opportunity to not feel, again, tied down. They can do it from anywhere. For example, I take some of my Girl Scout opportunities with me when I go on vacation, and I can get them done then too. For some of you, you might think about seasonal positions. If you have snowbirds, if you live in a community where snowbirds come in to a warmer climate and spend a few months during the winter to avoid the snow, or vice versa, you have people come in the summer from a hot climate and spend time in your more moderate temperatures, think of ways that you could engage those folks just at that time of year. It's interesting that people who come and spend a couple of months in a place are interested in feeling more a part of the community, because they do call that community home for part of the year. And I saw that in Hawaii, where we had folks who came in for the winter, and they engaged themselves at the elementary school, at the library. They looked for ways to feel like they were part of the community when they were there. And the final strategy I'll share with you is one that I got from all my years of work at United Way, and the term is too deep leadership. We never had a key position that didn't have someone in training for it. If you've got a really important volunteer who's leading a committee, or leading a fundraising event, or managing an event that you're putting on, you don't want to have the situation happen where that person suddenly has to leave because of a work assignment, or a sick child, or an elderly parent, or whatever happens in people's lives. You don't want to be stuck. So always having a vice chair position or an assistant to that person is really an important thing for them too, because they're not going to feel good about leaving you in the lurch, and you certainly don't want them to. So let's talk about the ultimate sustainability strategy, and that is we've got to engage a younger crowd. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the baby boomers' offspring, who are the Gen X and Gen Ys, or millennials. And I'm going to focus specifically on the millennials just because there's so darn many of them. And the good news is that making the changes we've been talking about in your volunteer program in order to attract the baby boomers will also ring true for the Gen X and the millennials. They think very much the same about volunteerism as we do. It's just that we're going to probably have to pump it up on steroids and on Facebook and Twitter and everything else. So let's just take a few minutes to look at the millennials, so you can think about what you might be able to do to attract these guys. Here's what we know about them. I'm just going to hit on the highlights here, but number one, we know they are civic-minded. The research shows they may even be more interested in civic engagement than their parents are. And knowing that the baby boomers already are volunteering at a higher rate than their previous generations at our age, I think that speaks wonders for Gen Ys, that we're going to be able to get them engaged in volunteer activities. Their values include a lifelong learning interest, and they are interested in a work-life balance. So they're not going to be so much workaholics as their parents were. They're going to do their work, but they're going to want to also be engaged in things in the community. They are skilled at multitasking. They're wired for collaboration and working in groups because that's how they were trained in elementary school and high school. And they are learning community organizing through online social networking. And certainly we're seeing that in an international sense these days, in addition to what we see our own kids and kids in the community doing. So yes, we definitely want to bring the Gen Ys on board. So let's find ways to engage them. Here's just a study that asked folks of this generation, what was it about a volunteer experience you had that made it rewarding for you? And so think about this in terms of how we can attract them and what it is they're going to need from a volunteer experience with us. They want to see immediate impact, and you've heard that from the boomers as well. Maybe not so much immediate as we just want to see an impact, but the Gen Ys are going to want to know immediately what this does. How is my effort going to make a difference for somebody? It was really important to them that they believed in the effort, and it was also really important to them that they made friends and met interesting people. And it was important that they found the opportunity well organized and efficiently run. They're as interested in that as the boomers are. They don't want their time wasted, and they want to have fun while they're doing it. If you can create volunteer opportunities that allow them to invite their friends in, they will do so, which is kind of cool. And I'll show you in a few minutes on Volunteer Match where you and they can automatically post your volunteer opportunities to Facebook or Twitter or whatever so that they could share them with their friends and do some recruitment for you. So remember, this just isn't about baby boomers. We've been talking about boomers all this time, but boomers are just the leading edge of these changes in volunteer engagement that we've been talking about. And in order to attract the skills and abilities of the generations that follow, we're going to need to implement these for them as well. So just, yeah.
I just want to interject for one quick question.
Sure.
I think we can clarify. They're asking, if these numbers that you were referring to, I guess in terms of the generations, are national or global numbers. And they're national numbers, right, just to clarify?
You mean the numbers of bodies? Yeah, those
yes,
are national numbers.
Of boomers and Gen X and
yep.
Gen Y. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
No problem, thanks. So let me just summarize what we've been talking about in sustainability here, because I want to take some questions in a minute and then move on to the next topic. Remember that what we're talking about here is not necessarily that we're going to be able to sustain the volunteers, that we're going to be able to retain them for the same number of years as we're used to retaining maybe the senior volunteers we currently have in our volunteer force. But what we're going to focus on is how are we going to sustain the work that they do. And again, that doesn't mean that some people aren't going to stick around. I've been a Girl Scout volunteer for 17 years, and a lot of us have done that, but we're interested in specific tasks that we can move on from. So Suzanne, let's take this as a minute. Are there any other questions out there right now that I can take before I move to a new topic?
No, not at the moment, and I was sorry to interject there, but
no problem.
I could just make that clarification.
Sure.
At the moment, everybody seems fine.
Okay. All right, here we go. Then I'm going to move on to talking about some trends and issues in volunteer engagement. And the first one is virtual volunteering, which I mentioned just briefly earlier. I just want to give you a sense of what this might be and how you might engage somebody virtually. Again, this is where the volunteer actually completes the assignment online. So they could do things like provide technical assistance or support to your staff. They could do online research for a grant proposal or a newsletter. They could develop the newsletter. They could provide professional consulting expertise over email or now over Skype or any other way to access people online. They could design a brochure or a logo from home. They could translate a document into another language. So there are a number of things that people could do in terms of providing technical assistance and support to you without ever having to necessarily come to your office. They can also provide direct contact with service recipients, and lots of organizations are using this in a number of ways. For example, to electronically visit someone who's homebound. This could be done in addition to the in-person visits that some of you I know are doing in your homebound delivery programs. There are also online mentoring projects, such as helping students with homework, or helping an adult find a job by working together online, or helping prison inmates with studies or programs that they need help with over the internet. The other cool thing about this is that virtual volunteering programs allow for participation of those who might not be able to volunteer on site due to disabilities or home obligations or non-traditional work schedules. So even somebody staying home with an elderly parent could find time during the day to help you do something virtually. So it's a great opportunity to give somebody a chance who might not otherwise have the opportunity to volunteer in another way. Another trend that's old now, but I want to bring this out because I don't see enough people doing it. Oh, that's me doing my volunteer assignment in Hawaii there. Do you see that photo there? Who's laughing? But what I want you to think about here is that remember that the group you're working with now is engaged. The baby boomers and the generations that follow us are very familiar with online work. We know about email, et cetera. So you need to be communicating with us in that way, making sure that we have easy access to materials online. I know as a Girl Scout volunteer, it's great to know that at 11 o'clock at night when I'm finishing something up, I can go to their website and download a form that I need. If you don't have those things posted on your website or on a wiki or somewhere where people can access them when they need them, then you're doing them a disservice. And if you're asking them to report to you on something, you need to find a way for them to do that online. Even if it's just filling out a form and sending it back to you or sending you an email, you don't necessarily have to have a fancy online reporting option. But if you have some way for people to handle it electronically, that's definitely what you want to have. Okay, so the last trend I want to talk about is online recruitment. And the most basic form of online recruitment is for you to have, at the very least, information about your volunteer program available on your website. If they can download an application, if they can download volunteer position descriptions or whatever, that's even better. But at the very least, you ought to have, we are seeking volunteers, these are kinds of things we're looking for, and here's the phone number or email of the person that they need to contact. But I want to show you now how some of the how online recruitment works, and I'm going to show you Volunteer Match for two reasons. One, because as Suzanne mentioned, we've been in a partnership with them for about 3 years now, and we've found them extremely good to work with. But also because they're the biggest, and that's one of the reasons we got involved with them in the first place. VolunteerMatch.org has about 70,000 nonprofits and government organizations who are seeking volunteers post their volunteer opportunities on this site, and they have millions of visitors each year who are potential volunteers looking for a place to get involved. You can any organization can have a free account. You can recruit people for free on the site, but they also have an upgraded service that costs a little money. I think it's about $75 a year that gives you some additional features that you can use to help people find your volunteer opportunities easier, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that. Now, if you think about the person who sits down on Saturday night and says, gee, I need to do something meaningful in my life, and they type in the word volunteer into Google, Volunteer Match is what comes up first, which is another reason we selected them. They're well known and respected, and people are interested. So here's where you would go. This is what volunteermatch.org looks like, the homepage, and you'll see that there's a place to enter a zip code. And what we know is that 80% of people who do a search on Volunteer Match just type in their zip code. They don't go any farther. There is a keyword search you see there, and there's also an advanced search option, but 80% of the people who use it just type in their zip code. So if I typed in a San Bernardino zip code here, and you'll see what happens is you see that it found 507 volunteer opportunities within a 20-mile radius of this zip code, and it's only displaying the first 10. So and then you can go and look at page after page. So one of the things you want to know about getting involved with Volunteer Match is you want to get your volunteer opportunities at the top of the page as often as you can, and you want to make them interesting enough that people will click on them, because we know they're kind of shopping, they're sort of zooming through all of these, and they're going to click on the things that seem most interesting. And I love this one that's at the top, Game On, video game leader at the Highland Library. Who could say no to that? So let's say that somebody clicks on one and they take another look. This is what they're going to see. This is the information that appears on Volunteer Match. They see who the organization is and a brief description of the position, and there's the all-important I Want to Help button. When they click on the I Want to Help button, an email is generated to you so that you can follow up. You can even set it up so that an automatic email goes immediately back to them, thanking them for their interest, and you can even attach a document like the full volunteer job description or your volunteer application or both. It's a very savvy system. We're finding we can use it very well. And you see the little buttons under the I Want to Help button there. That's what I was talking about, that if you post this job description and you'd like people to see it, you can just click on there and automatically post it to Facebook, Twitter, or any number of other sites. And we got a new statistic last month that we get 167% return on those clicks. So it is a good thing to share your positions periodically on your library's Facebook page or personal page, or get your volunteers and other staff to do that as well, so you're reaching out to other people. I'm just going to give you a little brief introduction to what we've been doing in California, just to sort of give you an overview of it here. The statewide initiative is called Get Involved, powered by your library, and it was created as a follow-on project to the California Transforming Life After 50. There were two pieces to the project. One is that we had a series of training opportunities on how to create non-traditional skilled volunteer positions and how to retool volunteer programs to attract and keep baby boomer volunteers. And a number of those trainings have been archived in video on this website. So I want to share with you that you all can participate, have access to much of that training that we did if you'd like at any time. And the second part of our project was a partnership with Volunteer Match. We now have 80% of all the public libraries in the state have signed up to use Volunteer Match, and they're using the free tools, and I'm going to just show you briefly how it works. This is our Get Involved website, and you see the little Get Involved powered by your library green and orange map of California there. That's the widget that Volunteer Match created for us, and that appears not only here on our volunteerism page, but also on the home page of the state library and on library websites throughout the state. And what happens when you type a California zip code into that is you get this special hub page that they created, which aggregates volunteer opportunities, again, within 20 miles of the zip code, but it aggregates them in 3 columns: library volunteer opportunities, literacy opportunities, and then just general opportunities in the community. And this is what went to one of our goals, which was we really like you to get involved with the library, but if you don't find something at the library that suits your interests and skills, here are some other things that are available in our community, and we'd just like to see you get engaged. We're averaging about 1,200 unique visitors to this site every month, and in the 18 months the site's been up, we've had over 10,000 referrals, averaging about 500 a month. That's when somebody clicks on the I Want to Help button on one of our library volunteer opportunities. And the libraries have about 800 volunteer positions posted right now, and they're really great. So if you haven't had a chance to do the little scavenger hunt I put together on Volunteer Match, try it out and see. I think by using that, you'll be able to see what makes something jump out and what maybe is not so successful. Thanks to those of you who've already done that. I think you had some great insights. Here's one here. I picked this one out because it's a technology coach, and I know many of you have expressed interest in looking for ways to get people with technology skills on board, and this is also an inspirational story about a man who lost his job and came to the library to volunteer, and he set up a program that he now continues to present even though he's luckily found another job. So we've had some great skilled volunteer success stories in our California program. We've got people helping job seekers. We've got computer coaches, professional event planners, graphic designers, photographers, all kinds of things. And you will hear more about that from Jennifer and Joan. And I'll also tell you that on our Get Involved website, we're collecting volunteer position descriptions from California libraries who are using things. If you're looking for some ideas about how to engage volunteers at that level, feel free to take a look at those and borrow to your heart's content. The final issue I want to mention briefly, because I always get asked about this, is risk management and volunteer programs. And I want to basically just bring your attention to a couple of documents that I put in the supplementary materials for this week. There's one called Liability Insurance and Risk Management Issues for Volunteer Programs, and also a word about criminal history background checks. A couple of you drafted volunteer position descriptions for homebound delivery volunteers. Such a great program. I love that. But I always suggest that you at least think about, is this some place where you might want to have a criminal history background check? If you're sending people by themselves out to homes of vulnerable individuals, that's a time when you might want to let that red flag at least raise itself and check it out with your HR management or your legal counsel in your city or county. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. You all should have access to a legal counsel in your, probably through your city or county government. This is somebody you might want to talk to about that. The other thing I always suggest to people is if you haven't checked this already, you should find out if your city or county government may already have volunteer policies and procedures in place. And even a volunteer coordinator, many of them have, because if they have that, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you'll find a terrific ally in that person. Okay. That's really all the actual material I wanted to present for today. So Suzanne, are there any questions at this point?
At this point, we've got a question about whether or not Oregon has, I guess, a volunteer match site like what we've created in California.
I don't believe so. I think we are the first. Volunteer Match has been great helping us put this together. They do it with a number of other organizations. They have a number of corporations, for example, who use a system like this to engage their customers often, or their employees or others, and it's a great system. We found it to be wonderfully helpful. I think we're the first government entity that they've done, and I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to other states that are interested, and I'd be willing to talk to people about how it works, et cetera. So feel free to email me or give me a call. It's really been a great partnership. I have nothing bad to say about them. They've been wonderfully supportive.
Carla, this is Jennifer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain that the volunteer match program is available in Oregon. It's just that there's not a state partnership like the one that the library has here.
Exactly.
Because anybody can use it.
Right. No, exactly.
It just wouldn't be free.
Right. Well, anybody can use it for free though too. So
is that right?
Wherever you are in your state,
we pay for the
right. We pay
bonus.
for the upgrade for our California libraries. But in any state in the country, you all have access to the volunteer match site for free. You can pay $75 to have access to their upgraded site. That's part of the partnership we have with Volunteer Match. As part of the contract we have, they provide that upgraded site for all the libraries in California. So yes, everybody can use it, but that very special hub site that we have in California is the only one, I believe, that is in a state government.
Well, and just to clarify this a little bit further, Carla, Pam from North Carolina was mentioning that she had checked into it for them, but it was very expensive. But again, people can still do this either independently, their own library, or even if there was a state effort, they could do it without cost, right? Just by using the free version of
anybody can use it for free, yeah. Okay. But I will say that it's been worth every penny we've spent with them. So if anybody wants to talk about what it cost and what we got for that, I'm happy to share that information. They've done an incredible amount of work for the service we've provided. And as I mentioned, we're getting 11,000 potential volunteers looking at libraries who may never have thought of us before. So we're feeling really good about it. Any other questions at this point, Suzanne?
No,
Nope. Okay. Well, then let's move on and get our guests involved. I'm just so glad they could join us, and I've asked them just to spend just a couple of minutes telling us some successes, some of maybe the kinds of skilled volunteers they've engaged so far, and maybe to what they attribute their success at this point. And we're going to let them each do a little presentation, and then we'll take some more questions from them. So, Joan, would you feel comfortable starting?
Sure.
Great.
So I'm Joan Young from San Jose Public Library, and I coordinate the volunteer programs here. We did a large staff training on volunteer engagement using best practices, and each branch or unit, as a result of that, created a volunteer position that they wanted to recruit for. And we had a nice variety of positions, things like coordinator of computer instruction, director of citizenship program for people becoming citizens, branch photographers, videographers, coordinator of teen community service volunteers, and a wide variety. And then a couple of our most successful programs have been a job seeker support group and an afternoon homework club for elementary-aged kids. And each has a leader who coordinates the program, but others serve on the leadership team. For example, the leader of the job support group eventually got a job, and another member took over the coordination of the group. And the Homework Center has been very successful and engages over a dozen volunteers and about 30 to 40 students, participants per week. It meets one day a week at one of the branches. And San Jose Public Library used to have a staff-led homework center that was funded by a grant. And when that money ran out and the centers were slated to close, a group of concerned parents from one particular branch got together and decided they wanted to create a volunteer-led program. And now that model has served other branches are creating similar programs and using that one as a model. And I think the main reason for the success of these two programs was that there were volunteers who were passionate about their cause and the need for the programs in their communities. And it's interesting to note that both of these programs were initiated by community volunteers who collaborated with staff to make it happen. We didn't actually have to go out and recruit a position, to lead it. It sort of came out of the need in the community. And word of mouth was a big part of that recruitment. For example, the people who supervise the homework club are mostly parents, and they communicated through the local parent group at the school and the email blasts and things like that. And then in the Homework Center, we did use Volunteer Match to recruit high school-aged homework coaches, but most of the leadership came from the parent community.
Cool. And Joan, anything you want to say about what do you think are sort of the key success factors here and how well it's going in your town?
Well, two things. I think we were very deliberate about the training we gave to staff to give them the proper tools because, most people started out just feeling like, I have no idea what this is all about, and a little bit of fear and, hesitation. But we did 6 weeks of training for 2 hours each session and covered things like how to write a position description, how do you use your circles of influence among your staff and volunteers, existing staff and volunteers, to find more specific to the position. And so I think the training was very important. We also had our leadership, our director and management at the library was really behind this whole program. And so it came from the top down. It wasn't something that we had to create from grassroots level. It was important to our leadership.
Right. To have that person on board is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Joan. That's great, and we'll give you a chance to contribute on some of the other questions I'm sure we'll have later. And you can tell that Joan's from a big library, and so I invited Jennifer because she's from a smaller library. Jennifer, do you want to give us the benefit of your experience?
I can certainly try. St. Helena is, in fact, a small library. We serve about 10,000 people. And when we got started with the Get Involved project, we did not have a volunteer coordinator. We still don't have a volunteer coordinator. And we had no real recruitment effort either, but we were seeing an increase in interest of people wanting to volunteer and really to volunteer in positions that were more exciting and engaging than just, the traditional library work. Some of you may have already seen the YouTube video that we made about our program, our adult program series, that's where a lot of our volunteers go to. And that's kind of, I say, probably our biggest success story has been that program. We do 2, sometimes 3 adult programs a week, which is huge for a library of our size, serving a community of our size. And we get, on average about 40 or so people that come to those. Sometimes it's, closer to 20, sometimes it's closer to 150, and we end up worrying about things like fire code. But that entire program exists because of our volunteer effort. And we have people that coordinate with other volunteers. We have people that come up with the ideas for the programs, that make the programs happen by finding people to put them on, getting them the resources they need, doing all the marketing efforts, so creating the flyers, email newsletter, distributing flyers. All of that is done by volunteers, from creating copy and everything else. So all that the staff really has to do is support the volunteers in their efforts, and because we don't do the work, the volunteers do the work, and all we do is kind of stand back and get out of their way and provide them direction as they need it. We actually do have a number of virtual volunteers that help us with this, and a couple people that, although they come into the library, also work virtually as needed. We had one volunteer that does all of our graphic design work and flyers. She actually was her mother was unwell, and her mother lived in Nebraska, I think, and so she had to fly to Nebraska every other week for about 6 months, and the whole time she was there, she kept doing our flyers. She would just go to their library and make the flyer and email it to us, and so it was fabulous. And we also have somebody that does our email newsletter virtually, and she basically she travels all over the globe for her work, and so she might be in Taiwan, and she gets on and does our email newsletter and sends it to us. And then we have people who double check their work, and those people are volunteers as well. So they work really well as a team. So that's another example of kind of what Carla was talking about. So when somebody's sick or on vacation, somebody else will pick up the slack and take care of it. I actually, one of the things that really kind of catapulted this whole thing into the level that it's at right now, it had already been moving in this direction, but I had a baby last year and was on maternity leave for 4 months, and which started 2 months earlier than expected. And so all of our volunteers that had already been helping us just kind of stepped in and took over, and have, since I came back in June, they just kept doing it. So I was like, well, this is great. I don't have to do all of this work anymore, because our team had really proven themselves that they were capable of doing it. As far as what makes it successful, I think the biggest issue for us has been how we view volunteers. We have to have a lot of trust in them, a lot of great communication with them, whether that be in person or via email. Our staff relationships with volunteers have changed quite a bit, and the way our staff views volunteers, because we don't ever want to hear the phrase, they're just a volunteer. The way we treat our volunteers is the same as we do as staff, and make certain that they get the support and the respect that they need, that they get that we provide growth opportunities for them, we provide training for them as needed, and just really keeping them happy and making certain that the work that they are doing, they are enjoying, and so that they continue to want to keep doing it, and that maybe that their position changes, and it is a process in that as the relationship grows with the individual, their position kind of changes as well, because we find that as we get to know them better, we find out what their likes and their dislikes are, and how, what kind of management style they like, and it's just really been a huge success. And we have some people that work 20 hours a week, and we have other people that come in 2 hours a month. It just depends on what they need and what we need, and what kind of commitment they want to make.
That's great. Yeah, and there's nothing like a win-win situation. That's what we're going for here, is something that makes the volunteer feel good about their ability to contribute, and also is helping the library get something done at the same time. Thanks, Jennifer.
I see there was a question about whether or not we approve the programs before they happen. Yes, we do. That's pretty much for the most part, the bulk of our involvement. Basically what happens is we have a committee of people that meet, and those are all volunteers with the exception of myself. And then we meet as needed, but I'd say probably about quarterly, to go over the program plan for the year. And we're always, we see what's coming immediately, what's coming in the next quarter, and then right now we're actually working on planning 2012. And so we have we kick around ideas. Anybody can come in with an idea, so it could be my idea that I then say, why don't we try this, and then they'll take over, and then anybody can pick it up too. So we'll say, somebody will say, I really like the idea, I want to be in charge of that program, and then they will go off and they will find the individuals that we need and the resources that we need. They'll come back for approval, but it is a group process. So the library can at any time say, no, I don't think that's really right for us, but we do listen to the people that are on that team, because they are not just our volunteers, they're also our patrons, and they live in our community, and so that's the people that we're trying to reach through these programs. So if somebody on our team comes up with an idea, we expect that there's going to be people that would want to come to that program, and they oftentimes will have program ideas that we would never have even thought of.
Yeah, that's great.
We also have a question for Joan.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, where do I begin, or how do I promote this idea in my library if I don't have top administrative buy-in? As you had said in your library, it came from the top. Do you have any, or maybe both of you would have tips or suggestions for how do you nudge it along until you do have that buy-in?
Well, one of the things we did is we had an all-staff in-service with over 400 library staff members attending. And that's where we gave the initial exposure to what is volunteer engagement, or what did we want them, we wanted to have them understand the key concepts as they walked out of that. And so we had, and this was really before we had done any, system-wide program for volunteer engagement, but we were just in the beginning stages. And we had 3 different volunteers speak at that in-service who were already people that were doing this type of work, even though we didn't call it volunteer engagement, at that time. They were great examples of the projects. One of them had created our docent program collaboratively with staff that focuses on the artwork in our main library and gives public tours. And another one did Chinese cultural events at one of the branches a couple times a year. And so they each explained their, what they did, and I think it was a great way for people in the audience to really understand what volunteer engagement was. And also we kept repeating that, it wasn't about taking away their job, it was about enhancing services. So I think that was kind of a good initial exposure. We were fortunate because our library director was already supportive, but I think that in-service gave some more people, a feeling of comfort with this program. And then we took it that summer after the in-service, which was in the spring, we did a couple of presentations at our managers forum. And that's a group that meets once a month for all of the branch and unit managers. And that covered things like, what would their role be in leading this initiative? So I think that helped to get some buy-in from the management level.
And if I can speak to that a little bit, because we don't have 400 people. Gosh, I wish I did, but we only have 16 people on staff. And but we also had some of the same issues. And one of the things that I would point out is, even when you have your director saying, let's do this, me being the director saying, well, we're going to do this, you still have to get buy-in no matter what level you're at. So if you are at the bottom trying to get the people up at the top to buy in, or if you're at the top trying to get the people at the bottom to buy in, there's still got to be an effort there. One of the things that I have found to be the most useful is just attitude, and just like with everything, you lead by example. You find your champions, and then you have to prove it. And so one of the things that we've done with a number of programs, and not just the volunteer program, but is you call it a pilot, you call it an experiment or a trial. You say, we're going to do this for X amount of time, and it kind of gives you permission to flunk. And then you go back and say, well, this worked and that didn't work, and then you build on the success. And so by calling it, just an experiment or just a trial, you can go out there and you can get support from either your manager or from your director or for the people that work for you to just try something new, and it makes it a little safer. And there's somebody had a question about replacing staff. Colleen had a question about issues of volunteer replacing staff. And I think that's going to be different every library, but the only place that we've had that is an issue is if, actually we haven't had that as an issue. We have lots of volunteers coming in, and I guess what I would say is augmenting staff. We don't generally create positions for which we already have staff. The positions that we're creating are things to enhance the library and to extend our reach, extend our ability to do things and to sustain things, but we aren't turning our general job description classifications for regular staff into volunteer positions. Now, I know there's sometimes some people that are handling our budgets would like to see us do that, but that's a matter of politicking and making certain that those people understand the value of having paid staff.
Unfortunately, this is such great information, you guys, and I really appreciate all the firsthand experience that you have to offer here. Unfortunately, we're coming up to our last 5 minutes, and we've got one question that I think is fairly weighty, so I want to figure out if there's a way we can get a brief response from maybe both of you, or Carla, too, can chime in. And then we can always continue the conversations on Moodle. But the other question related to this sort of replacing staff is, how have you involved your unions?
Well, this is Joan, and I can speak to that a little bit. When we created our task force or planning team to implement volunteer engagement, we had a union representative on that planning team, and so that really helped with the exchange of ideas. And we also just kept the communication lines flowing both ways between the union president, who happened to be a library employee, and the volunteer program management. So as various staff members would express their concerns to the union president, she would bring them to our attention so that we would be sure and address them. And then as we formulated ideas, we would turn around and run them by her to see if she foresaw any problems. So communication was probably a big piece of that, and involvement by serving on committees and being a part of a team.
Yeah, this is Carla. I might just add that there's a lot of information about this in the reading this week, and a couple of great video clips that you could share with folks who are concerned about this. But one of the things we found out early on in the system, in the project, was that people were under the they believed that in their union contract it said you couldn't engage volunteers. And so we did a little survey and found out that nobody that we talked to actually had that language in their union contract, and it was sort of one of those things that everybody believed was true, but it wasn't there. And that's when we started talking about, okay, let's get the union involved initially and be very clear that what we're trying to do here is not replace staff positions. We're looking at ways to enhance what we're able to do for our customers, and bring in skills that we wouldn't be able to hire, bring in people who can do things for us that our staff just doesn't either have the time or the expertise to do. So if you're looking for some more material on this, feel free to take a look at what we've got in Moodle, including the little video clips.
And this is Jennifer again. I know it's 1 o'clock, so you guys are needing to wind up. But I just wanted to make a quick comment on something that Corey said in the chat. Was talking about how they were using volunteers for landscaping projects, which is awesome. However, I would definitely put in there as a caveat that if you have that as an idea, always check with your whatever your governing people are about what potential problems there could be with that, because we run into issues of insurance and whether or not the people were going to be covered if they fell down while they were doing something like that. So anytime you have somebody doing something that would normally be contract work, be sure you double check that it's okay.
Yeah, and I would say, just to sort of summarize here, that we know there are potential barriers out there, but what I want you to think about is that there are amazing things you could do by bringing volunteers in and engaging them in new ways and bringing their skills to bear on the services you're providing to the community. So look for ways, not necessarily around the barriers, but look at how to embrace those barriers and take the next step. What else could we do in order to make this vision a reality? I just wanted to summarize by saying, too, remember that we're not just doing this to get the work done, although that's a wonderful thing to get the work done. What we're doing is building library supporters through this process, people who will go to bat for you when you need somebody to go to bat for you, and people who feel part of the library family, so they'll be willing to stand up and speak on your behalf, and they'll understand your issues in a way that other folks in the community don't. So always think about not just the work we can get done, but what's the greater good that we're doing by engaging these folks in the library. I want to thank all of you for participating in the online course and for being here with us today. Both Jennifer and Joan have allowed me to put their email addresses up there for you, bless their hearts, that they'd be willing to respond to other questions, and you know that I'm willing to do that too. So anything you need, let us know. We want you to be successful with this.
Thanks, Carla, Jennifer, and Joan. This was a very stimulating presentation, and as I said, it was really valuable having you share your firsthand experience and insights. So at this point, further conversation can continue in Moodle, and also thank the three of you also for being so graciously offering, so that if there are folks who want to have an additional conversation with you directly, they're happy to respond to you if you just email them at the addresses listed on the slides above. And thanks everyone for your participation, and we'll look forward to our next webinar with Cindy Mediavia on March 31st.